I think this might be my favorite comic that is currently coming out right now. What do you say?
I agree, 100%. I agree, 100%. Those old school executive types. Oh, I tried the carrot, but they wanted the stick.
Ooh, and that's something Shoff is very good at, giving you the stick. We love having Shoff here on the episode, This Comic Cooks, and we hope you do too. All right, let's get right into it, Shoff. This is the type of comic, Shoff, that would be almost like a Kevin Smith movie in that it is just a bunch of talking heads.
That's
There's
true.
no action in this entire issue. And I want to know, what did Shaw think about that?
You know what? If you were to like just tell me that this is what the issue is about, I would be like, "Oh, really? Oh, that's kind of weird. That's kind of boring."
Shaw,
But
you're
guess
not even
what?
going to see the spider suit in
Yeah,
this
you're
whole
not going to
issue.
see Spider-Man in action. You're not going to see any like dueling, any combat of any kind. It is strictly going to be at a dinner table in a nice restaurant while they wine and dine and have a conversation. And as you just told me that that's what the premise was going to be, I don't know if I would have been super excited about it. But after having read the issue, incredible, incredible writing, dialogue, pacing, everything worked. We even get an introduction to another person within this universe that we're seeing for the first time, a staple in Spider-Man lore. Of course, I'm talking about Gwen Stacy.
Ooh-wee.
Yes.
And she was a knockout, Shaw.
Oh, yeah.
This is a guest artist, Shaw. This is a different artist from the one that we've seen for the first 3 issues. This is David Messina. And I got to say, I loved the art in this issue.
Yeah.
Every panel was fantastic.
And I don't even think it was too far off from the prior issues, too. Like, you could tell that, and granted, I don't know David Messina's other work to say if this is symbolic of what he always does, but like, it still looks in the vein of the prior 3 issues. So I would say like it's a pretty smooth transition, which is nice. Sometimes it's not smooth at all,
Right.
and it's very jarring.
Yes.
And that is never an enjoyable experience when you're so used to a certain artist
right
on every panel. So this was a good transition, I think.
Yeah. And I gotta agree with you, Shav. This was one that I was reading it and I was expecting there to be action, and it just stayed in the same restaurant scene the entire time. And then it was over. But at the end, I was not like disappointed. I was
Right.
not like, oh, I want my money back. This was a fantastic issue. And like I said at the beginning, I think this is just a continuation of my favorite reading experience right now in comic books. I love finding out more and more about this ultimate universe, this new ultimate universe. The bearded Peter Shaw, I love, even though I shaved a little bit of mine off, Shaw, but I'm still loving the beard. So I'm
yeah, it looks
this is a
good for
different
him. It
Peter.
really does.
Yeah.
And I like
It sets
that it's
him
not like
apart.
what's that?
It sets him apart from, like, let's say if you just saw a picture of Peter with a beard, you'd be like, oh, that's Ultimate Peter.
Yeah, it's true.
The other Ultimate, not
Yeah,
the first
yeah.
Ultimate. Yeah.
I gotta say, it's really interesting, the dynamic here, because by the end of this issue, you find out, because Harry basically, like, during a moment when MJ and Gwen are in the bathroom talking and having a similarly charged conversation, you've got Harry talking to Peter, and Peter finds out that Harry has told Gwen everything, and so she knows that he is donning this Green Goblin suit and essentially fighting crime and this or that. Whereas Peter has decided to keep this information from MJ and from his son, while his daughter knows, which creates a weird divide. And I think it's so interesting that normally Harry is not the one who's got the good like judgment. He's not the one making the right decisions, like the right choices. He's usually the one sort of who's impulsive, who flies off the handle, who isn't forthcoming, who is hiding and harboring secrets and stuff. And in this case, like, it's totally in line with his character, because he was quick to take off his helmet and show himself to Peter in the prior issue. So like, for him to then say that, oh, I've already told Gwen everything. We don't keep secrets. Like, we're stronger together. I'm like, man, Peter is gonna do what he always does and screw up this relationship with MJ. In any universe, he can't hold her. He cannot keep her because of these secrets, because of everything. So, man,
Yeah, that is interesting to think about. As soon as he becomes Spider-Man, is he gonna ruin it? Because he's had, what, 20 years of being married and 2 kids. It seemed like they have a great relationship, seemed like everything was going great at home, and now you throw in this other this the whole another career,
yeah,
basically, where it's gonna take up so much of his time, so much of his effort and mind space. Now, is that gonna be the thing that causes them to snap, their relationship to sever? So, I wonder if Hickman is gonna go that route. I don't know how long he's gonna be staying on this book or how long he's gonna be staying with Peter himself, so we'll see, but that is interesting to see, and that's what I like about this series in general. What if you just twisted one little thing, one decision, the Maker coming in and changing the
right.
spider biting Peter, that sets up all of these dominoes and chain of events, and now we're seeing the ramifications of, okay, now we're trying to put it back
Yeah.
to where it would have been. So once Tony comes into the picture, once the other superheroes come in and the Avengers and all these things, what is that going to mean for our ultimate Peter? I'm very curious.
Hasn't every issue been a different month, like in the sequence?
I
Because
think
they've
so.
made a point of showing that, like this issue takes place in April, right? So,
Yeah,
um,
I think that's
and
right.
didn't in the first issue when Peter was confronted by like the hologram of Tony Stark, didn't he indicate, and I'm not going back personally, I'm not like looking at it to know for sure, but didn't he say something to the effect of in 6 months that they would be like reconnecting or something like that?
I think that's right.
And
I
that would
have not
sort of
gone
fall in line
back.
with like 6 issues, right? So,
Right.
which is a normal arc. So my guess is by the end of this sixth issue, um, we'll get the return of Tony Stark,
Mm,
them reconnecting in a reality sense, not in like a hologram sense or whatever. That would be
right.
pretty cool. But that's just a guess at this point.
Yeah. Yeah, I wanna see what is gonna transpire. I pulled up the first issue, so I'm gonna see if it's what the month it says at the very beginning. But that, yeah, January. So it seems like
Yeah, so that's
January,
4
February,
months.
March, April. Yeah, that seems like what they're doing. So by June, off, we should be at issue 6, and we should be seeing what's
Ooh,
going on. I'm curious, not only on that side, but then also you have that B plot line of Ben Parker. What's going on with his arc with J. Jonah Jameson,
right.
their whole separate paper? Because that's even on the cover of this issue, on issue 4, you've got the Spider-Man, the Green Goblin, and then J. Jonah Jameson calling, and then the byline of "Who is Spider-Man" by Ben Parker. So that seems to be what the main core elements that they're playing with in this first arc of issues. So I'm curious to see where they're going with that, where Hickman is taking us, Shaw. But I'm in for the ride. I'm definitely in for the ride.
We see two scenarios here. We see a husband who is not being forthcoming with his wife, and we see a husband who is being forthcoming with his wife. I assume that they're married, or is it just boyfriend girlfriend thing with Gwen Stacy and Harry Osborn?
I thought they were married. I thought they showed a ring at some point.
I
I'm
think I
looking through the
recall that
issue.
too. So let's just go into the presumption that they're married too.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, she is wearing a ring. Okay.
Okay.
Um, for your relationship, assuming that you are also Spider-Man in disguise, right? Like, what knowing that you're putting your family at risk if your identity is known, which do you feel like you would lean more towards? Because I think they both made solid arguments here in this issue for why they are doing what they're doing. But I also feel like there's definitely got to be a better, like, one of their ways is the better way, I think definitively, but I wanted to talk to you about what you think it is. Is it
I
better to
think
hide the truth from your spouse to protect them, or is it better to have them in on it so that there's no secrets and still, vow to protect them?
mhm. To me, I think it's better to have them in on the secret, but not your identity public. Because if your enemies know that that's your wife, if they know that that's your weakness, I think that's when you have the trouble. If it's just you and her that know, or just you and him, that I think as long as you can keep I think it's easier to keep the lid on that and to
Yeah.
keep her safe and protect him or vice versa, whatever it is. I think that is the better way to go rather than if you're keeping everybody out, if you're shutting everyone in your world out from that secret, then it can start to play tricks on you, start to mess with the relationship,
Yeah.
especially when you're trying to come up with excuses for, hey, where were you? What's
Right.
going on in that sense?
Well, and
Um,
and how could you keep something so amazing a secret, right? Like that's a huge part of yourself that you're not sharing with your spouse, that you're sharing with other people. That
mhm.
is grounds for problems in a relationship, big time. Whenever you're, choosing uh to devote, very sensitive and confidential information to somebody who's other than your spouse, you're adding that other party into it, and
Right.
that's just a problem. I'm
Yeah.
with you. I would have to let them in. It would be too hard for me to keep that secret. Not just the comings and goings, but like I would want to share it. I'd be so
Mm.
excited to I'm Spider-Man. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. Like you wouldn't believe what happened to me, what I got, this special gift, this amazing suit. Look what I can do. I can make a difference in this city. And he's not looping her in, and I just think like it's a powder keg. It's going to explode in his face. And but I also agree. You gotta protect your identity from the public for sure.
And
Yeah.
and if you go back to the 616 Spider-Man, let's say his relationship with Gwen Stacy versus his relationship with Mary Jane. Gwen Stacy didn't know he was Spider-Man, and Mary Jane did. If you go back in the history of the 616 universe, and I think his relationship overall was better with Mary Jane because of that, because he was able to let her in, and I think they were writing him at a more mature time in his life versus Gwen was like high school and then early college.
Right.
MJ has been past that, post that. So I think even just if you look at that aspect of it, it's just better when other people know and when his family knows. Aunt May was kept out of the loop for a long time, and there's been a whole bunch of stuff in that side. But I think it's just overall better if your spouse, if the person that you're supposed to be sharing your life with is not in on this, if there's a section of your life that you're keeping from your spouse, and especially when it's that big, I think it's different if it's like, oh yeah, I pee in the shower, Shoff. That's something that I don't want my wife to know about. That's something that maybe she doesn't need to know about. But if I'm
Too
Spider-Man,
bad she's watching the podcast.
I well, I didn't say it was me, Shoff, but
Whatever.
if
Whatever,
if I'm
dude.
outside swinging webs and lifting cars over my head, that's different. That's something I think that she should know about. That
All right.
that or that analogy I just came up with, Shoff. That example is my friend. My friend wants, I know enough people, Shoff, that they told me that secret. So
Oh,
I think
really?
that's where I
Okay.
got that from.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Okay.
His name
Okay.
was Shames Joffman. That was my
What? I
friend's
do
name.
not. I do not do that in the shower. Not a
I
chance.
didn't say you did. Are you Shames Joffman?
I know, but
That's
I know him.
completely different. Oh, okay.
I wanted to call attention to some dialogue towards the end of this
Ooh,
issue
yeah.
because the most prominent line in the history of Spider-Man is mentioned in this issue, and we were speculating in the prior episodes regarding this comic book series who was going to say it. Was it going to be said? And if it was going to be said, was it going to be said by like a parental figure? You at one point, I think you said you thought it was going to be Uncle Ben who says the line, um, with great
And that's
power,
right.
right?
And that's the original 616 version.
Or
That's
if it was going to be, I speculated that because Uncle Ben in this particular this timeline doesn't seem as fatherly so much. He seems a little colder, a little more distant. I thought that J. Jonah Jameson had more of that fatherly vibe, the real caring father vibe. So I thought it was going to be him, but I don't think either of us expected that the line was going to get delivered by none other than Harry Osborn. And I was going to read it if it's cool by you. All right, here we go. So he says, This is at the bottom of page 22. He says, I'm not going to tell you what you have to do, Peter, or how to do it. It's not my place. It's not my call. You have to decide that. Nobody's forcing you to come along for the ride, but you need to understand where this is headed and what we're up against. These people, they're playing God and they're playing for keeps. And worse than that, they've been doing it our whole lives. It's institutional, it's systemic, it's the whole damn world. And you have great power, Peter. And with great power comes great responsibility. It's such a gift, but only if you use it. Wow. Powerful stuff. I loved it. What did you think about Harry being the one to deliver that line?
Well, I, as a Spider-Man purist, Shoff, I don't think I've ever told you this, but in my history of Spider-Man, I've always been a stickler for them cutting that line short, because the original line is, with great power there must also come great responsibility. And that's just, I think, a sign of the times. When Stanley wrote that, in the 50s, 60s, that's just sounded more like the
Yeah.
current vernacular. Nowadays, I think if he did write it today, it would be shortened and would be, with great power comes great responsibility. But I just like, there's something about me that is a stickler for that. And I always be like, okay, you have to say the full line when you say it. So that was what stood out to me first. When I first read it, I was like, oh, he's doing the short version. He's going the other route. But like you said, I was not expecting it to come from Harry. I think even Mary Jane would have made a little bit more sense to me. But you speak about the fatherly aspect of it. For him to have just met Harry, this is not
Yeah.
his best friend
No.
from childhood. This is just somebody that he's just met, and they've connected through the vigilanteism, or the, being a superhero. And for him to give that advice, number one, this must be a more worldly Harry. This must be somebody that has more experience and has, maybe he had a better upbringing. Because at this point in the fourth issue, we haven't even seen, is Norman Osborn even alive in this
No, he's dead.
reality? Okay, so I wonder how he was raised. I don't know if we're going to get that backstory or not, but just for him saying that, I think we can kind of glean that Harry Osborn has a little bit of a good upbringing. He has some type of morals and some type of responsibility
Right.
in his life. So I'm I'm wondering, how much does that say to us about Harry, and not necessarily about Peter, but what type of man is Harry? What type of man is he even going to be moving forward? And as the Goblin, or as whoever he becomes, I want to see, does that play into it? But very interesting, this twist. And that's what I want. I don't want it necessarily to be the exact same as 616, or even the previous Ultimate Spider-Man, Ultimate Peter Parker. So I like getting, not being able to predict it. I like that.
Yeah, I agree. I enjoyed that it came from Harry, because he's been doing the vigilante thing longer, clearly, and he's more successful at it. He's just more seasoned, and so he's a good mentor for Peter to have in that regard. And the fact that they met each other, but he also seems to be intense. He's pretty intense a character, both off and on, in terms of his crime fighting persona or not. And they comment on that at the end when MJ and Peter sort of reconnect. They're like, that was kind of a lot. they were kind of a lot. But they had a good time too. So it'll be really interesting to see where this goes. But man, Peter, tell MJ you're gonna screw this up. You're gonna mess things up. Tell her.
Do you, at this point, at issue 4, Shoff, do you think he's going to have told her by issue 6, or is it still going to be a mystery in your mind? What do you think?
It'll still probably be something that she doesn't know by 6, or it'll be 6 where the proverbial shit hits the fan, I think.
Yes. Okay. That makes sense to me, Shoff. Well, what do you think, listener? What do you think, viewer? Is Mary Jane going to find out, or is she going to be kept in the dark until issue 6? We definitely want to know. We want to hear from you in the comments down below here on YouTube. This comic cooks. is always going to be here telling you what we think is cooking right now in the comic book industry as well as in the television industry. Shop, there's some
Ooh.
comic book properties on TV right now that are cooking. And we're also going to be getting the Wolverine Deadpool movie or Deadpool Wolverine movie, however you want to say it, Shoff. And that is going to be our only live action. Well, the only live action comic book property that I'm looking forward to. We also have Craven and Venom 3 coming out this year, Shoff. So
well, and we talked about doing a bit of a double feature, forcing ourselves to watch Morbius and
Yes.
Madam Web.
And I can tell you right now that those things do not cook, Shoff, but we want to tell you why they don't cook. So stay tuned for our lovely thoughts here on the channel. Shoff, thank you very much as always for joining me, my friend.
Thanks for having me.
You are the Harry Osborn to my Peter Parker.
So hairy, so hairy.
I would love if you would join us again